7.5, The Fan.
Good afternoon to you, everybody. It's the guy that sounds like JMV. I hope for John's future diets, he doesn't end up looking like me. In fact, I was confused for JMV like as of last Wednesday. I am leaving a meeting at Ben Davis High School. I'm having a conversation with a buddy of mine. A gentleman walks by and kind of pauses and points at me and goes, JMV? Like, no, but it's close. I've heard that one before. Greg Rakestraw is my name. I am your substitute teacher. Please try to keep the spitwads thrown in my direction at a minimum because I know this type of crowd. I know you guys in the Windschuler's Lounge are thinking about it. That's one of three, by the way, James. Mark that down. We are nothing if not movers of commerce on this show. I understand the value of the almighty dollar. 317-239-1070. That is the old school methodology in which you can converse with me if you would like to. You can always tweet to me at Greg Rakestraw. You can even email the show. Yeah, I still have an email account here. Greg at 1070thefan.com if you would like to. Or, as I tell people, if you have the bat phone, as in like my own personal cell phone, I might give it out later in the show. Jake would do that. I'm not going to unless I like screw up and say like my cell phone number is like the call-in number. I think I actually did that once before. We can try that way. Interact with me on Facebook, whatever the case may be. We'll do our best to get through this to soldier on without JMV. I think he is contractually obligated to actually use his vacation days at some point in time. And let's be honest, he and I both have a pretty good perspective on this. In terms of, this isn't exactly a real job. We get paid to talk for a living. We get paid to go to ball games for a living. That being said, this time of year, you kind of put in some crazy hours. And if there is one person that matches me for a level of crazy in terms of the things that he tries to pull off and do and hours work and shows hosted, etc., would be JMV. Dear God, he was on until 2 in the morning next door at B105.7. I hope you appreciated my same song, Digital Underground Tupac contribution to the program and what was hour 2 of an 8-hour tour that he did on Saturday night. Then he came back and was on the air at 6:30. Again, this is the first world problems. This is the luxury of life that you get to live, working for a great company like this one and working in a wonderful city like Indianapolis. But you still have to actually sleep at some point in time, which for some reason for John seemingly is rare. So I hope he's like a hyperbaric chamber somewhere. I know he's not. But I hope he's doing as much nothing as possible today. He'll be back tomorrow. He did leave me with a short show in which to fill in for him. And I know that it may be strange for some of you that are watching in the lounge because John just kind of looks off and randomly. I'm sure I'll do that at some point in time. But while I look like a radio guy, I am now trained like an internet professional. So I am staring right at the camera. Maybe I'm creeping some of you out. I don't know. We'll figure that out as the show goes along. Those listening on radio, you don't care. Anyway, 317-239-1070 at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the program to Greg at 1070thefan.com. We are with you until 5:30 because much like John could have used some sleep after his all-nighter and early morning escapades on Sunday morning, the Indianapolis Colts can use some sleep as well. In fact, the Colts now are on their own dime, so to speak, for the next 6 or 7 days. They're on the bye. They're at 5-5. Literally, Skylar Wood just walked back in from Germany you look very Bavarian. You look like you would fit in nicely in Germany. How was the Pilsners, by the way? Good? Okay. You don't have to stop. You don't stop talking just because we're on the radio. You know the deal. You can interact with me, be a part of the show if you would like to. Skylar and Ken Myers, the two tremendous engineers from Radio 1 that made the trip with the Indianapolis Colts over to Germany. But the Colts need a little bit of a break as well. So the Colts are having what their normal Monday night show is on Tuesday, and it's at 5:30. Why is it at 5:30? because the Pacers play in Philadelphia tonight at 7. So hence, Pat Boylan, Mark Boyle, pregame coverage 6:30. You're stuck putting up with me only until 5:30. How will we make up the time? Well, we'll go about it this way. J.J. Stankevitz, who I also hope will get some time off for the Indianapolis Colts. He is allthingscolts.com. He and I share a booth during the course of home games. He is the public address voice. Me as the dude giving you red zone highlights during the course of the second half. JJ, a talented writer, and a freakishly good player of immaculate grid. If anybody else has been kind of sucked into that, like the way I have, Rick Bozich tweeted about it one random day. I go, what's this? And now it's like religion. I do this every day. I haven't had time yet. They've been kind of busy. Rick Russell is in the upper right-hand corner for what it's worth. You want a little 6% free play there? That's probably way too mundane of a play for JJ. We'll compare notes about Immaculate Grid and also talk about the Indianapolis Colts coming up in the next segment of the show. After that, my buddy Sam King, who for a long time was a tremendous high school sports writer for the Lafayette Journal and Courier. He still covers high school sports when he can, but these days his primary occupation is the chronicler of all things Purdue sports, football, basketball, etc. Last night, Purdue played the first real game of consequence of any of the local schools from a college hoops standpoint. Beating Xavier, and thankfully I was able to kind of watch most of it. So like my experience as a sports fan last night, first of all, let's tell you about my experience as a dad. My wife is working in San Diego for the next few days. She flies back in tomorrow. So my experience is being within eyesight of my child while literally having my phone like in front of me, like holding it like in selfie pose, but actually trying to go back and forth between Purdue and Xavier, as well as the Monday Night Football game, the two things I will talk about to some degree here in the opening segment of the program. So it's my first chance to really watch Purdue. And again, I don't know how good Xavier's going to be this year. I think they have 10 new faces. That's not exactly atypical anymore in terms of college sports. So preseason rankings, I'm not sure the validity you give to them. And honestly, haven't even looked to see exactly where Xavier's going to check in. I'm literally scrolling as we speak. And on CBSSports.com, they have Xavier 7th and Butler 10th in the 11-team Big East. So Xavier, fair to Midland. If you're 7th in the Big East, you're probably a borderline NCAA tournament team. So there will be much bigger games coming down the pike in the near future as Purdue now heads over for the Maui Invitational. Not going to be played in Maui this year because of the tragic fire that swept through Lahaina a few months ago. But as it pertains to the upcoming season, we will learn more about the Boilermakers coming up next week. But my overarching question about Purdue, and I'll discuss this with Sam King later this hour, will remain the same. And that is, how do you make anything relevant in the regular season? How do you make anything relevant during the Big Ten tournament? Because you've had your success there. You've been the best team in the nation. You've been the best team in the Big Ten. You've been the best team in the Big Ten tournament. You've had the National Player of the Year, and it got you beat by Fairleigh Dickinson. And the year before that, it got you beat by St. Peter's. And the year before that, it got you beat by North Texas. And a few years before that, it got you beat by Little Rock. You get what you know what I'm getting at. And again, I'm not saying this as the anti-Purdue guy, okay? I consider myself a very pro-Purdue guy. I want to see the Boilermakers be successful. I want to see Purdue playing in April. Frankly, I want to see Purdue playing their first and second round games at Gamebridge Fieldhouse on March 22nd and March 24th. I want to see them win. I enjoy watching them play. I loved watching last night's game, and I'm not sure it means a hill of beans, given how things have played out over the course of the last 3 seasons, and especially last year in March as the second number 1 seed to ever lose to a 16. So I'll enjoy it, but I tend to go, okay, show me what you're going to do from March 22nd on. That's when you tend to have my attention now, Boilermakers. So we'll talk with Sam King about that coming up in a matter of moments. I am able to retain Well, a lot of water, as those of you that are watching on the feed can tell. But I'm also able to retain a lot of information. However, sometimes things go in one ear and out the other. So I know when I am on the show normally at 3:30, there is someone from Pro Football Focus that is on, we would say at 4 o'clock, but given how much John pays attention to the what we call the clock in the business, that guest normally joins us about 4:07 or 4:08. James, if you don't mind, his name one more time is?
Brad Spielberger.
Brad Spielberger. Did I say that correctly? Brad Spielberger. I said that again not to emphasize his name, just so the random synapses in my head actually fire, and hopefully I don't refer to him as something else when I welcome him on the show during the course of the opening segment of the 4 o'clock hour. The rest of the 4 o'clock hour is open to you and I to have an interaction at 317-239-1070, on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw. Email the show to greg@1070thefan.com. We will have one long segment at 5 o'clock, getting you ready for 5:30 and Colts Roundtable Live. We will get you there with Chris Denari, television voice of the Indiana Pacers. And again, Pacers coverage at 6:30 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. And we'll point this out with Chris, kind of quirky for the Pacers in terms of not just the back-to-backs, in terms, of in the same team, same town, because they just played the Sixers on Sunday. They're playing the Sixers again tonight, but they don't play again until Sunday. That is rare that you have that many days off, especially this early in the season. So you need your Pacers fix? Get it tonight. It's not happening again until Sunday at 5. When the Pacers are back at home, take on the Orlando Magic for a 5 o'clock tip and a 4:30 pregame coverage start time here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. From a Pacers standpoint, it is interesting to see some of the national attention that is being drawn towards the blue and gold. That's wonderful. I like that. That's a good sign. The numbers they are putting up offensively can be jaw-dropping. The numbers they are allowing at times defensively can also be jaw-dropping. It's Tyrese Maxey, right, that plays for the Sixers, who had 50 on Sunday. I know he's a regular rotation player for that team. I think if you showed me a headshot, I could pick him out. But 50 for him? Really? Again, so there are some things a lot to be happy about. A lot of things to fix as well. I also know I have officially hit middle age. When I saw the in-season tournament court from at home about 10 days ago and go, I'm not sure this is for me. I like the concept, and again, like most things, I get it, or I understand it. You're trying to make games in November and December feel more important. You're trying to give people a reason as to why they should watch. You know, you get that kind of initial burst of the first 7 to 10 days of a season. It's new, it's fresh. And then you start competing with World Series, and that turns started the college basketball season, and college football getting more important, and NFL getting more important, and Thanksgiving, and the stage the NFL gets on Thanksgiving, and the NBA easily gets lost in the shuffle. So I understand why you have this in-season tournament. And I understand that court is not designed for me. It is for an age bracket much younger than me. But my first thought in seeing that court is, would you please get off my lawn? I've officially hit that age when I see that court. And you'll see a version of that's my warning to say you're going to see a version of that in Philadelphia tonight. So perhaps nothing against Chris and Quinn and J.J. Love all those guys. Consider them all personal friends. I actually have 2 of their 3 cell phone numbers, and Quinn, you want to give me yours, I'm fine with that too. But for the safety of your own eyes, perhaps you should listen to the broadcast this evening on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. A couple of things I wanted to talk about before we get to our first break and then get to our next guest, which would be J.J. Stankevitz. So let me talk Colts first. They're both football related. And I realize stunning that the first thing that we kind of talk about, or the thing we're going to dedicate the most time to today, is the National Football League. I know in sports talk that never happens, right? It's very undercovered. And even on a week where it's the bye week, you're going to get your daily dose of the Colts. You kind of get that's the way that it works. It also happens to be the thing that I'm probably best versed in. Obviously, I can talk Indy 11 high school football, Monon Bell Classic. I'm happy to have all those conversations with you, whether here on the telephone lines, over the radio airwaves, Facebook, Twitter, whatever the case may be. But I do want to talk Colts because it's this wonderful natural break with having 10 games in and going into the bye that it truly is. And you have heard coaches say quarters. I'm not sure with 17 games you can mathematically do that correctly anymore. But it really does feel like it's first half, second half for the Colts this year. And the first half of this season has handled this team a lot of curveballs. Frankly, through 10 games, every team deals with injuries, curveballs, etc. We thought, hey, this is the year to get Anthony Richardson experience, right? And it didn't turn out that way. Minshew mania. And it's been rather average over the course of the last couple of weeks. But the Colts have given themselves a ticket to the second half dance. They are 5-5, and there's kind of conflicting ways to look at this, to feel about this, to think about this. And I forget exactly whether it was The Athletic or it was ESPN. I forget which one of the two that I read this. They basically gave a percentage chance of the Colts making the playoffs of somewhere around 25%. And that was this week. This is after being 5-5. And what I remembered is, I guess I looked at it almost like in draft order. Like the Colts were 21st out of 32 teams in terms of what this article or this computer ranking service, whatever the case may be, thought that's what the Colts' playoff chances were. So I was kind of scratching my head about that. And then, as I'm watching Monday Night Football last night, I see that the Indianapolis Colts are a half game back of a playoff spot. And again, as established by my disdain for NBA in-season tournament courts, I am get off my lawn guy. I've officially hit that age. 46 apparently is that age for you now. Rounding third and heading towards 47 at the end of next month. Get your gifts accordingly. My birthday is December the 30th. Thank you very much in advance. But as I just go, you're 7 games left. You're a half game out of the last playoff spot. And the schedule is not crazy difficult. Again, the Indianapolis Colts had to scrape by 2 of the worst teams in the National Football League the last 2 weeks. I acknowledge that as a statement of fact. And as I said on the post-game show on Sunday, unless you lived in Indianapolis, you thought that Sunday morning's game was dog blank awful. 16 points were scored and 10 were scored in the first 12 minutes. I get it. I understand it. But in Indianapolis, we just beat Darth Vader. We just perhaps beat the leader of the evil empire for the last time. I mean, I was thinking this. I'm like, okay, they're switching from Mac Jones to Bailey Zappi. Like, in no other scenario would you be sweating that other than it'd be a very Bill Belichick New England Patriots thing to do, to switch to Bailey Zappi. That dude goes off. Patriots win the game, roll credits, and I got to talk about it for 2.5 straight hours. I've been a part of that movie. Because I can take you back 22 years ago in the days of me hosting a Sunday night postgame show. The Indianapolis Colts are 2-0. They're the greatest show on turf. I think they scored 45 points in back-to-back games against the Jets right before 9/11 and the Bills 2 weeks later in the first game back. Defense was terrible, but who cares? Kind of like the Pacers so far this year. They're scoring 45 points a game. They're going to be great. Colts are 2-0. The Patriots are 0-2, and their starting quarterback in Drew Bledsoe got his lungs imploded by Mo Lewis the week before. And some dude that couldn't hold a starting quarterback job with the Michigan Wolverines and Tom Brady, some 6th-round pick, he's getting his first NFL start. We're going to cream those dudes, right? Colts are going 3-0. We're going back to the playoffs for a third consecutive year, right? No, they got beat 44-10. Again, old guy experiences. You didn't remember things like this. So in my mind, part of me, it's like a right brain, left brain fight that's watching that game on Sunday morning. I'm like, dude, Mac Jones stinks and Bailey Zappe's his backup. He can't be any good either. But in my mind, in the recesses of my mind, I'm like, this is how this is going to end, right? The guy that's been terrible all season gives way. The unheralded backup comes in. And literally because of his last name, like you can picture the words like it was a Batman episode featuring Adam West. Bang, boom, zap, pow. The Patriots go down the field and score, and they win 13-10. Didn't work out that way, thankfully. Okay? So that's why, yeah, I know if you didn't have a dog in the fight, you didn't have money on the game, it wasn't exactly a thing of beauty. But for Colts fans like us, that was a beautiful kind of ugly that you witnessed on Sunday. But big picture for the Colts, again, they've got an opportunity. They've got a chance. Are they a perfect football team? No. But think about where we were at this point in time last year. This thing was careening off the tracks. It never felt good at any point in time of the season. But at this point last year, Colts fans, we had seen our team win for the last time. Think about it. It was literally this weekend a year ago that Jeff Saturday coached in his first game. That may give you chills just saying that phrase right there. But the first game was they win against the Oakland Raiders. Little did we know the Colts had won their last game of the season. And again, it got real ugly from mid-December on. Doesn't have that feeling this time around, does it? Now, I think the Colts probably got to go 5-2 the rest of the way, which is not going to be easy. But it is possible. And I think going into the season, clearly so much of the focus was on Anthony Richardson. Well, after week 4 or 5, that kind of goes away. But now, you say, okay, what can this group do? Well, it's kind of like the groundskeepers in Major League. I'll paraphrase her. Maybe they're not so bad. Maybe they're all right. Maybe this can be a playoff team. And as a fan of a sports team, if I think my team can be a playoff team with 7 weeks left to go, I'll sign up for that, especially after what last year was, and especially after the expectations were going into the season. The same thing can be said about the Buffalo Bills. Maybe they're a playoff team too, because they have the exact same record as the Indianapolis Colts right now. And they are 5-5, and they are officially a train wreck after last night. Because as you watch that play out with so many key turnovers, and then you have the special teams penalty after a 41-yard field goal is missed by the Broncos that somehow, some way, despite trying to hand Denver every opportunity to win that game, the Buffalo Bills are going to hang on and win, except, we got one too many guys on the field. There are 12 guys on the kickoff, on the field goal block unit. If you go just across the lake in Canada, that's cool. Doesn't work in Buffalo. You can see Canada from there, but still doesn't work. And second time around, Denver makes the field goal. In Buffalo, a team that a lot of folks, myself included, thought might be Super Bowl bound, may miss the playoffs entirely. And you just kind of had the feeling somebody's going to get the gate because of that. And in case you hadn't heard, that somebody was Ken Dorsey, their offense coordinator, who clearly had nothing to do with the special teams gaffe, but still he had been on the chopping block. Somebody had to go. It's Ken Dorsey that got let go today. So the Bills have a new offensive coordinator. It's amazing the difference in perspective. Colts are 5-5. I'm not sure we're going to throw a parade, but we're pretty happy about it. The Bills are 5-5. They're ready to throw people in the lakes because of it. I'm glad we're on the front end of that. I hope we get to the point where 5-5 is a bad thing. We're not there yet. But that was the other thing that struck me in watching, again, kind of that going back and forth. Monday Night Football, Zach Edey. Monday Night Football. Hey, Trey Kaufman-Wren's playing more. Monday Night Football. The concept for Monday Night Football was turnovers by the Bills. Well, there was some personnel turnover today on that front as well. So that in a 25-minute manic rant is what's happening in my world, in the world of sports. We'll spend more time talking about Purdue, about the Colts, about the NFL in general, about the Indiana Pacers, and whatever the Sam hell you want to talk about with me as well. 317-239-1070. That's the phone number. At Greg Rakestraw on the artist formerly known as Twitter. And you can even email the show as well, Greg at 1070thefan.com. Quick timeout. J.J. Stankevitz next. We're doing our best to make up for the loss of JMV today on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Ride with JMV.
If you leave me now, you'll take away the biggest part of me.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
James, are you excited that you actually get to play the music on the show today? Or you're like, damn it, that's more work for me?
I'm actually happy with it. I get to have a little bit of say in what we hear. I love getting to play the music.
You'd be surprised to know, I'm sure John is the DJ on the program. So usually this is whatever music he thinks sets the mood. So, Stevie Wonder is always good with me. We can be all Stevie, the entire show if you want to do that. And good by me. J.J. Stankevitz from Colts.com. And I have no idea what time his body clock is telling it is right now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I don't know what time it is, Greg. The sun's out, but is it? I don't know. Tough to tell.
I know that the NFL has done studies and teams spend thousands of dollars, if not more, to figure out how the body clocks react for their players. How does it affect their riders, JJ?
Nah, don't worry about me. My issue isn't as much the jet lag as it is my kids not respecting the jet lag because they're 3. So, waking up at 6:15 when if I just could be able to sleep in until 8 or 9, I could get right back on schedule. That's the part that's really throwing me off right now.
Your kids absolutely do not care, and we've all been there in various shapes and forms and fashions. So you guys flew over Thursday night, left here basically at 9. What time Central European time did you land on Friday?
We landed, I feel it's like 11 o'clock a.m. local time. So not bad. It was a pretty quick flight. And then we took off late Sunday night from Germany and landed back in Indy at about 3 a.m., 2:30 a.m. local time. So, usually when you fly to Europe, you do the overnight going there, and then you take off in the morning coming back, and you land, in the afternoon in
Sure.
America. Doing the overnight kind of on both ends, I think has had a little more of an effect. But, I mean, look, don't blame the Colts at all. You want to get everyone back for the bye week so they can get out of here and get as much rest as possible, which is kind of the goal here now.
No doubt about that. J.J. Stankevitz, Colts.com. Of course, public address voice, Indianapolis Colts. Greg Rakestraw in for JMV here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Again, I realize this was a business trip, yourself included, and obviously these trips are now a bit more compact than they used to be. So, was there really any time to kind of go out and sightsee, experience Frankfurt, or was this just a longer version of your random trip to Nashville in December?
It was probably more of the longer version of the trip in that, when I get on the road, I obviously don't have as much to do as, the people whose jobs matter for the outcome of the game. So I can kind of, go out to dinner in a city and enjoy it. And, we had a chance to go walk around Frankfurt a little bit. And I got to say, the amount of NFL fans that were out and about who did not have American accents was really, really impressive. A couple of my coworkers and I, we walked from kind of the city center of Frankfurt over to the train station where Patrick Mahomes' face is just plastered all over. And then we walked back toward the NFL, their kind of fan square. But on all those walks, it was just, you would see people in Packers jerseys and Jaguars jerseys and, quite a few Colts jerseys over there. And then you would kind of listen and hear, and they were not speaking with American accents. And I think it was so neat to experience that where, I did an international game and I covered the Bears in London where a lot of Bears fans flew over for that game. And it felt like everywhere you turned in London, it was someone, attacking with a Chicago accent.
Sure.
That they're going to call into the score. And here it felt like it was just a lot of Germans and a lot of Europeans who made the trip, whether locally or from within Europe, because they wanted to go see the game. And it really felt like even in just that 4-year span that the NFL's roots in Europe grew even deeper than I really even expected.
JJ, I'll be honest with you, and obviously my experience in terms of hearing those accents, the best chance for me is hearing the same rooms that you're in. That's the post-game press conferences when we carry those, on the post-game show. And I'm pretty sure I deducted a German accent, a Dutch accent, an Irish accent, and an English accent. I'm like, okay, this is like the United Nations covering a football game. I'm into that.
It was funny, Bernard Ryman got up there in the press conference, and, of course, there were some Austrian reporters who asked him questions in his native language, and I had the thought, it took me back to the times where I've been in a press conference covering baseball with Japanese reporters who would travel, and cover, the Major League Baseball and ask players questions in Japanese. It was very similar to that experience, and I was like, I haven't had one of those in a while. And it was really cool just to see the big grin come over Bernard's face as he gets, asked a question and he answers it in a language other than English. It was really neat to see that.
Well, obviously, you guys were great on social about sharing his reaction, the hug that he had with Bjorn Werner. So what sort of relationship did those guys have before this weekend? How well do those two know each other?
I don't know. I don't know if it was like they knew each other super well or anything, but I think the big thing that I learned is just how big of a deal Bjorn Werner is over in Germany, because he was kind of one of the first guys to make it. It was him and Sebastian Vollmer, right?
Right.
And those guys are a really big deal in Germany, and they have this huge following that really was neat to see. Like Sebastian Vollmer got announced in the stadium and the place went nuts. And then, you got Bjorn Werner, he can't walk 3 feet without someone asking for a picture or an autograph. And Bernard talked a lot about the impact he had of, going to see an NFL game in 2013 in London and kind of that, showing him what it was like and kind of his growth within the game there. And I would have to imagine someone like Bjorn Werner was a big part of that. Just being from the same region of Europe, obviously Austria and Germany, not the same country, but are near each other and, share a lot of things culturally. To see someone like Bjorn Werner come over and now 10 years later, here's Bernard Ryman playing at a high level, that had to be a really special thing for him.
Before we talk about the actual game in and of itself, was that the largest karaoke bar you've ever been in?
That absolutely was. That was really cool. The singing and everything was absolutely incredible, and Europe is known for that. If you watch soccer matches,
of course,
you'll hear that. The Country Roads video that we put out, that my colleague Connor Handel shot, of Isaiah McKenzie kind of singing along and directing with the crowd and vibing to it, and then taking that kickback 47 yards. Greg, that's one of my favorite football highlights I've ever seen. It was such a neat moment, and I just wish there were more kickoffs in the game. Like it was the NFL's lowest scoring game of the year, and I wish there were more kickoffs because you had fans singing Wonderwall, you had fans singing Sweet Caroline and Take on Me and Country Roads, and it was all so cool. And I wish there were just a couple more kickoffs.
By the way, in case you wondered, Isaiah is not from West Virginia. He's from South Florida, by the way, to point that out before he didn't play his college football at the University of Georgia. I stated this in the previous segment. I understand that for most of the country, that was not the prettiest football game ever. For Colts fans, because of whom it was against, I don't care if it's the worst they've been in 25 years, the Colts still beat the stinking Patriots. What was the feeling like in the locker room after the game?
Yeah, it was a lot of, I think even not relief, but like, okay, we don't have to fly 9 hours back with a loss, right? And look, I think everyone in that locker room, regardless of what the Patriots' record is, they all know who coaches that team. They all know that you're going to get a competitive game every single time you face the New England Patriots, no matter what. So to come up with a win against a team coached by Bill Belichick, I don't care that they're 2-8. Those players felt great about it, and as well they should. So I think that the other overarching thing, just the takeaway is, it's so hard during the season to kind of look up and come up for breath.
Yep.
Like, it's such a week-to-week league that players are so focused on who's the next opponent, how are we going to beat them, that sometimes you don't even know what your record is. Sometimes it's not even at the front of your conscience. But to hear players say, hey, okay, you know what? We're 5-5 going into the bye week. Let's go get some rest, and let's come back and make a run at this thing. I think that was really neat to hear. Just, these guys understand now the opportunity that is ahead of them. And, yeah, their focus is going to be on Tampa as soon as they get back here on Monday. But, feeling like, hey, we made it through 10 weeks of this season. We've had our star quarterback and our star running back on the field for about 2 plays all year, and we're 5-5. This is the team that can make a run at it now. They are in position to do that based on their record, and that's something they should absolutely be proud of.
A couple of quick things before we let you go, and one of those things will be about you, but this. You mentioned the star quarterback being out, and obviously you've got some access that some others don't. Just how much time is Anthony Richardson spending around this team? I realize that everybody's scattered this week, and Germany was a little bit different. Just how involved is AR in the day-to-day meetings, et cetera?
So he was back last week, and then obviously the team goes to Germany, and then they come back and they're off. But I will tell you this, and this is just some little inside info, something for people listening to this to keep an eye out for. Lara Overton and I sat down with Colts general manager Chris Ballard for an episode of the official Colts podcast, which will be out tomorrow on your podcast feeds and on YouTube. And Chris had some really interesting things to say about Anthony and where he's at and what 2024 could hold for him that I think was really insightful and made me feel very excited about where things can go next year when Anthony comes back and is healthy.
Good to hear. All right, so I think if I remember right, like Colts social media takes like 2 or 3 days off to truly give everybody a break. Does that work for you as well?
Yes. It is a very nice thing that the Irsay family encourages through Kicking the Stigma, their mental health initiative. Everyone kind of takes some time away during the bye week, recharge, focus on your mental health, whatever that looks like, and come back because once Monday rolls around 6 days from now, we're back in it. 7 games to go, and it could be a real fun 7-week stretch around here in Indianapolis if the Colts make a run at this thing.
Well, buddy, I appreciate you giving us 15 minutes. Now go hide someplace for the next few days, and if I don't see you next week, have a happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you next Sunday in the booth at Lucas Oil.
Can you believe we're into the holiday season now, Greg?
No, it was hard. It was hard for me to think about JJ watching like Xavier Purdue last night. I'm like, even though I did the first college basketball of the season, I had IUPUI and Spalding last Monday at 11 a.m. I was still like, hey, dude, remind yourself, college basketball. You got to go watch it tonight.
Yeah, I got to go put Christmas lights up this week. That's one of my bye week activities.
All right, I lied. Go ahead.
No, it's crazy how quickly it's all come together this year.
Your immaculate grid score today was what?
Oh, I haven't done it yet. Haven't had time to do it.
Okay.
I will let you know when I see you in a couple of weeks what it was today.
Knowing you, my better guess is you like a 4 or something along those lines.
Oh, I mean, look. If I can pull out, Carl Everett on the grid, we are in good shape.
Be good, buddy. Talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
J.J. Stankevitz, Colts.com, joining us on the hotline. Forgive me. Hotline sponsored by, same as it's been forever and a day, Andy Moore, I'm Motor Group Hotline. I want to make sure I did not tick off the wrong sponsor. I already got Win Schuler's right for this hour. We'll get Andy Moore right every hour as well. Back in a moment. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Fall in Indy, and if you hate to paint, do what your neighbor Edwina did. She called Rhino Shield.
Over the years, I've had to touch up the house. I just got to the point where I couldn't spend any more money on the outside of the house. And when I saw Rhino Shield, I thought that was the answer to my problem.
Rhino Shield's a ceramic coating, better than paint.
I've had painters here before, and it was usually quite a disaster with them leaving their equipment here. But Rhino Shield was right on it.
Our 25% off special is now extended through December. Plus, receive a free game console just by having Rhino Shield applied by spring of 2024.
The gentleman said, if you're interested, give me a call. And I said, honestly, can you come tomorrow?
Remember, you have until the end of December to receive 25% off. Plus, get your job done by spring of 2024 and receive a free game console. Restrictions apply. Here's owner Shane Smith.
This offer is limited, so call me at 888-RHINO-41. That's 888-RHINO-41.
The Ride with JMV.
If somebody gets in your face and calls you a I want you to be nice.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I am always nice. I never call him that word, our next guest. And me and I have had numerous conversations over the year, but I don't think ever on the radio. He covers like everything in Lafayette sports these days because he might be the last of the Mohicans. It's Sam King of the Lafayette Journal and Courier that joins us now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Greg?
I'm good. I know how religious you are at times about your workout routine. I am not like interrupting like 400-pound squats, am I?
That'll come about 2.5 hours or so from now.
Okay, good. I'm going to make sure I got you at the proper time. So give our listeners an idea, because you now cover a bit of everything, high school, college, etc., what the last week has been like for you covering Lafayette area sports.
Well, I guess I will start with Friday night. Purdue had a home men's basketball game, and I'm watching at the same time a live stream of Lafayette Central Catholic play a regional game across town. And once Matt Painter's press conference got over Friday night, I looked at the high school football game and said, there's 9 minutes left in this regional. I think I can make it over there. And, thankfully, I did not run through any of the Lafayette Police Department's finest on that path, because I probably broke a few speed laws in order to get there. But I did make it before the end of the game and was able to catch the end of that and talk to some players and coaches. Then you come back Saturday, college football. Sunday, I was at the Purdue women's basketball game where the 1999 national champions were honored. And then obviously Purdue played Xavier last night. And now it's a week where we've got a local Hoops Classic tournament, a high school girls basketball tournament in town. So we'll be catching a lot of high school girls basketball this week.
So in other words, like I said, everything. Sam is the guy that covers it, the Lafayette Journal and Courier. All right, so we'll primarily focus on what you saw last night. Although, again, I set this up in the first hour, and again, I don't do this out of spite or being mean, because I want to see Purdue be successful. I enjoy watching Matt Painter's team, but it is hard for me just to not sit there and go, all right, show me this in mid-March. How does Matt avoid having his team and his fan base feel the exact same way?
I think that, Matt Painter is a really smart guy, and he's aware of what his reputation is right now with the way the last 3 seasons have ended. And all you can do is just kind of own it. And so that's what he's going to have to do. And until you change that narrative, that's going to follow you. So you're right. We saw this a year ago. Purdue started off, didn't lose a game until January 2nd, I believe, last season. And it was a last-second three-pointer against Rutgers. And you go on to win the Big Ten by 3 games. You win the Big Ten tournament. You get a number 1 seed, and then you have potentially, the worst loss in the history of the NCAA tournament. So until you do this in March, you're right. People are going to point at Purdue and say, yeah, but you lost to Fairleigh Dickinson. Yeah, but you haven't been to a Final Four since 1980. At some point, you have to have that breakthrough moment. And for a lot of people, that probably seemed like a Virginia game about 4 or 5 years ago. Ended up going to overtime, and then Purdue loses that game in the Elite Eight, and Virginia goes on to win a national championship. So everybody's, Purdue fans are just heartbroken and feeling like, man, what could have been if that was the moment. But I do believe this team's time is going to come, whether that's this year, a couple years down the road, but it hasn't happened yet. And I'm sure a lot of people in 1980 didn't think it was going to be, over 40 years before you had a chance to do that again.
I can look at names and spit them out at you. Lance Jones, Miles Colvin, Camden Heide. How is this team different from the one that Matt Painter put together that was so darn good until one bad night a season ago?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is Lance Jones is just a different dynamic. A kid that was at Southern Illinois for 4 years. And, I love David Jenkins. He was the nicest guy, a great guy to interview last year. But Lance Jones is different. He's got a different gear. We saw that last night with his ability just to get down the floor. He's got a lot of speed. He can shoot, although didn't seem to please his coach too much with some of the shot selection he had yesterday. But he's going to be a difference maker. Miles Colvin, Camden Heide, those are athletes that can get to the basket and jump over the top of people and dunk, and also can hit threes. That's something that Purdue didn't have last year. I didn't think was that guy that could be athletic enough to go up and jump over the top of people. And then the thing that obviously makes it all work is Zach Edey. But yesterday I felt like I was sitting there watching a subpar Zach Edey performance, and I looked at the box score and I said, okay, he had 28 points and 11 rebounds. I guess that's not bad. And then I asked Sean Miller, Xavier's coach, after the game. I said, a lot of people think the key is shutting down Zach Edey, and in a way it is, but is what makes this team really work. The guys around him that are all very good role players, and then I think Braden Smith is probably a superstar that people are not giving him credit for being, last year and especially this year. But Coach Miller, he said, we're okay if Ethan Morton, Miles Colvin, and Caleb First are taking three-pointers, and those guys combine to go 5 for 5. So there's a lot of different ways that this Purdue team can beat you. Now you've got to hit shots when it matters, and that's really ultimately why that team didn't beat Fairleigh Dickinson, because they were just going to sag in on Zach Edey with three players and force you to shoot threes and say, we got to pick our poison somewhere. And that particular night, Purdue could not hit outside shots.
The big question now is, Sam, do you get to go to Hawaii with the team?
I am not going to Hawaii, no. We will have somebody there who is a freelancer, can help out and is already there, and probably much more affordable from that vantage point, but also with that overlapping with Bucket Week, my priorities going to have to stay with football for what probably is Purdue's final game of the season, probably is Indiana's final game of the season, and, kind of the Super Bowl for those two teams. So that's what I'll be doing, is asking the weird random questions that I don't know if Coach Ryan Walters is very fond of getting at his press conferences on Monday, but that's what I'll be doing the week of the Hawaii tournament, and I'll be watching the Maui Invitational on television, of course.
All right, since you steered the conversation to football, that's where we'll end it, knowing we're kind of up against it time-wise. I think people knew it might be a bit of an uphill slog for Purdue this year in Coach Walters' first year. Obviously, Saturday was a bright spot to get back to 3-7, a couple of winnable games to end, but again, there will not be a bowl game this year. How does year number 2, I know the end result, what it needs to be, but how does year number 2 need to look different for this team than compared to year number 1 of Ryan being the guy in charge in West Lafayette?
Well, yeah, obviously this year it was a staff that inherited quite a bit of the roster and then tried to patch what it didn't have with transfer portal guys and just make it work on the fly. And I thought really, and I said this to a lot of different outlets before the season, a 6-6 season this year would have been a massive success and a great step in the right direction. Now, you're not going to get to 6 wins, but next year the staff is bringing in its own guys that it recruited for the system it runs. So that's really where I'm interested to see if Purdue takes a leap. When you get the players that you want for the system that you want to run, that's when you start seeing the results. And then the guys that are already here who you feel like you found roles for, how do they step up and become leaders when you kind of incorporate that new group that you've brought in to be your guys?
Sam King, again, he covers it all, literally, for the Lafayette Journal and Courier. Kind of join us now. Good luck in the weight room, buddy. And with all those various assignments you've got, from now to like the end of time, I'm sure our paths will cross again soon. Take care.
All right. Take care, Greg.
You got it. Sam King joining us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I am like JMV. I'm way past my break time. Back with more next on 93.5 and 107.
with JMV.
If peeing your pants is cool, consider me Miles Davis.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'm not sure there's a good way for me to segue out of that from Billy Madison. Into our next guest. I'll do my best. To the Andy Moore Automotive Hotline, we go for a third consecutive season, or segment, not just season. Brad Spielberger joins us from Pro Football Focus. Good afternoon, Brad. How you doing today?
Hey, doing well. How you doing?
Good. All right, let's talk process for you first, and I'll get to Colts, and we'll kind of work our way out from there. Just how much tape, how many games are you consuming every week before going on shows like this one?
Yeah, so the way I approach during in-season is every single Monday, will watch the Chicago Bears because I'm a tortured Bears fan. I will watch the Pittsburgh Steelers because I do a Pittsburgh podcast. And then what I do is I rotate. I pick 3 games a week. I can't watch every single game, but I'll pick 3 games a week where I'll pick matchups, obviously try to get each team in there, and I'll usually watch those Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Friday before the weekend hits. So 5 games a week, and 2 of those are stagnant and 3 rotating.
All right, so did the Colts and Patriots from Frankfurt make your rotation this weekend?
I didn't watch the All-22, but I did wake up early and watch the game, and made the decision to not watch the All-22 for that one in particular. Which I think is fair. But hey, it had the TV by itself, no distractions, a nice cup of coffee at 9:30. I think I got a fairly strong grasp of what went down.
All right, so I think we have an idea as to New England's fate. They're really the team. This is crazy to say. Worst record in the AFC. It's been at least a quarter of a century, if not longer, since we said something like that. Obviously, we're a little more concerned locally with a team that got their record to 5-5 by beating 2 of the worst teams in the league the last 2 weeks. Just exactly where do you kind of slot in the Indianapolis Colts right now, knowing they're a half game out of a playoff spot? Just how do they factor into the mix in the AFC, Brad?
Yeah, despite some of the inferior opponents, I still think there were things to learn and glean from this game. Coming into the game, the Patriots had the number 1 run defense and success rate allowed. Essentially, about 28% of the time, the opposing run game was able to stay on schedule, stay ahead of the chains, whatever cliche you want to use. So, I thought it was important to still see some efficiency on the ground, which, I think was hit or miss, at times throughout the game. But, not getting stuck in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, giving Gardner Minshew more difficult situations to navigate through. So I think I would say they got a B-, C+ in that regard, but it certainly wasn't a total drive killer and held them back. Look, I think they are, in the wild card mix to a degree. Obviously there are going to be some challenges against some good opponents, but I think Shane Steichen has emerged as one of the better coaches in the NFL, and we probably need to see multiple years of evidence. Let's not, Brian Daboll the situation here. Let's give him some time, but I think he has looked really, really good and has done a lot of extremely encouraging things. And you're also seeing growth from recent rookie, players or recent draft picks. Deo Dengbo obviously had the splash game in this one. Josh Downs playing through injury. So long answer short, maybe they just narrowly miss out of the playoffs. But it'd be hard for me as a Colts fan not to be extremely encouraged about what this team could look like with Anthony Richardson, another draft class, and some growth from these young players.
All right, let's talk game plan for the Colts. Again, we will obviously expand this league-wide coming up in a matter of moments. Again, Brad Spielberger, PFF, kind of to join us here. Greg Rakestraw in for JMV on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. We've seen 2 very conservative game plans, again, against kind of limited competition that works. And obviously that is, hey, feature your best offensive player, which unquestionably is Jonathan Taylor. Do we see more of the same of that going forward for the Colts, or does the playbook start to expand as they take on the Bucs, Titans, Bengals, etc. after the bye?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with Shane Steichen is that his willingness to kind of vary what he does on a week-to-week basis, which, might sound oversimplified, but is not a given, depending on every team. And so the interesting thing in post-bye is Tampa Bay is, again, one of the better run defenses in the NFL, but has been extremely susceptible to passing attacks. In particular, this past week they held up well against Will Levis and the Titans, but they had a gigantic trench advantage on the defensive side of the ball. The Titans might have the worst offensive line in the NFL. The Colts is playing, top half of the league, if not better right now. with growth from guys like Bernard Raymond and kind of bounce back years from Kelly and Nelson, et cetera. So I do think you are going to see more of a passing approach again on those early downs. I think also in this game, you're going to see a ton of zone and a lot of kind of disguises and confusion from Todd Bowles. So I think you'll move the pocket. You'll get some half-field reads to make things easier for Gardner Minshew, some high-low concepts, stuff like that to attack zone. Let Josh Downs and those guys go to work after the catch. But the big thing for me is Minshew's his footwork in this game, this past game, was really poor, and he was frantic. He was unsettled whether there was actually pressure or not, bailing from a ton of clean pockets in this game. I think the way you mitigate that is just get him on the move, a lot of boot action, and kind of just take the decision out of his hands and just give him some simple concepts. So that's at least what I would expect to see.
All right, one more Colts question. We'll expand it. And again, the Colts have been giving up a lot of yards rushing. It was bend but not break, seemingly, against Mac Jones and the Patriots on Sunday. But we all know what the cause of that is. It's not having Grover Stewart out there. He's eligible to come back after 2 more games. So the eyeball test tells you how good this guy has been. From what you study, from all 22, from metrics, etc., how do you begin to describe the effect that Grover Stewart has when he's out there for this Colts defense?
As big as any singular player impacts a run defense across the NFL. Like that is, he is a phenomenal early down run stuffer, can take on combo blocks, can clear up gaps for other players. Obviously, this linebacker core is exploding upfield. Zaire Franklin was leading the NFL in tackles, probably still is. I haven't checked in a couple of weeks, but, all of these stats, not saying those guys aren't also good players, but so much of that stemmed from all of the attention that Grover Stewart commands. And like you said, and not to put everything on one player, but if you wanted to point to the catalyst for the run defense, not sustaining the same level of play, I think it is because of him. So, yeah, on film you see it. His run defense grade before he got suspended, I think, is like a high 80, low 90 number, and I think the film matches that 100%.
All right, so since poor man, you're stuck watching the Bears every week, let me throw you at least one Bears question. We'll get you a Steelers question, as well knowing there in the not-too-distant future for the Indianapolis Colts, either on December the 16th or 17th. Obviously, we know Matt Eberflus well around here. You can argue whether he was going to be the defensive coordinator or not when the Bears selected him to be the head coach 2 seasons ago. Now with Bagent there and kind of you're going to get the Panthers pick, you feel at number 1. What is the future of the quarterback position for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I still, at this point, lean to they're going to use that pick on a quarterback. I think is it Caleb Williams or is it Drake May is the topic for me. I was kind of holding out, seeing if another quarterback could maybe emerge into that conversation. J.J. McCarthy at Michigan, I think, is probably the most likely to take that number 3 spot. He obviously threw the ball 8 times against Penn State, and he didn't need to throw. But, 3rd and goal from the 10-yard line, you run the ball. There were a couple other scenarios where I was like, if they had faith in this kid that he was top 5 pick good, I think he probably would have dropped back to pass. So, the right tackle was getting killed the whole game. Like, I get it. But anyway, I think that is still where this is heading. I do think Carolina, even in a bad division, is probably giving you a 1st or 2nd overall pick. And as much as I like Justin Fields, I've wanted to see growth from him. Even if I was in that seat, I'm taking one of those guys and starting fresh. All
right, now let's get to the Steelers. Because I don't think they're very good, yet they're 6-3. And I remember kind of feeling that way about them last year. The record wasn't as good, but they found a way to beat a bad Colts team here in and around Thanksgiving. If the Colts going to be a playoff team, overcoming the Steelers is something they will have to do. How'd the Steelers get to this point?
Yeah, they still now they're 6-3, and they have not had the yardage advantage in a single game this season still. And it goes beyond that too. The defense is good. The secondary is right now is a little bit banged up and has some massive holes in the secondary outside of Minka Fitzpatrick and Joey Porter Jr. But they're just good enough. And this defensive line, now that you drop in Cam Hayward, the emergence of rookie Keanu Benton, who I think is already a stud in this league. Like that's how they're able to take over games on the defensive side of the ball in the trenches and really just limit opponents, to an extreme degree. But no, they're going to regress. They're going to start losing some football games. I know they already beat Cleveland this year, They had, 6 sacks of Deshaun Watson. They had a defensive touchdown in that game, a couple other turnovers. I don't see it continuing. Like the run game's gotten better. Jalen Warren's awesome. I like the receivers. Like there's talent on both sides of the ball. Unfortunately, though, I think Kenny Pickett has regressed, if anything. He has not looked good this year.
All right, so with that, let's now talk about kind of the topic of the day, and that is what's going on in Buffalo. Ken Dorsey is out. Buffalo successfully gave the game away because Lord knows they tried numerous times. Denver kept giving it back to them, and finally, Denver hit the second chance field goal to win that Monday Night Football game last night. How does this play out 7 games from now for the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, very fascinating that the defensive head coach who called a zero blitz after getting a sack and pushing the Broncos out of field goal range, called another zero blitz with no safety help and just left his slot corner and Teron Johnson alone in a one-on-one matchup. That almost lost the game the first time. Then, he's not the special teams coach, I suppose, but they called timeouts after both the kneel downs, and you still leave 12 men on the field, and somehow that is the offensive coordinator's fault. That really, kind of confused me personally. So, look, I had concerns about them coming into the season. This isn't like a pat on my back thing. The roster is not good enough, and it's not making excuses for Josh Allen. Like, Stephon Diggs is awesome. Deion Dawkins is a good left tackle. You use a first-round pick on Dalton Kincaid, but I had been concerned with a secondary receiving option that could be a consistent week-to-week presence. I didn't think they had it. They don't. And their defense, it's like I think it's the third oldest defense in the NFL by average age. Von Miller, unfortunately, is not Von Miller anymore. Trey White, their number one corner, coming off a torn ACL, did not look good last year. Unfortunately, hurt again. I don't think they make the playoffs. Like, you look at their schedule going forward, they have the Jets, the Chiefs, the Eagles.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Cowboys. Yeah, their next 4 games, they might lose all 4 of those games.
Right.
So, look, they'll probably bounce back and win 1 or 2 of them. But anyway, yeah, I think it's going to be a struggle in that AFC East to make the playoffs for the Bills.
All right, one more story, and then we'll kind of get just to a look forward for you. And this is not exactly an analytics story, even though it's about a rocket scientist. It's a heart story. I mean, the Josh Dobbs story is remarkable, what he's doing in Minnesota. The fact that a team that is, that traded him, knowing that A, Kyler Murray was coming back, and B, they're concerned with tanking more than anything else, being the Arizona Cardinals. But can you remember anything like this that we have seen, the way that Dobbs has exploded upon joining the Minnesota Vikings?
I really cannot. I mean, the first game in particular was insane. Like, you're sitting there, Jaron Hall goes down with the injury. Nick Mullins, their backup to start the year, is on IR. So you're like, all right, I guess it has to be Josh Dobbs. He's on the sideline, like, learning the cadences from the offensive line. The center's hiking the ball. The guards are like, yeah, that was a good hard count. Like, yeah, give him some feedback as he's going through it. He's apparently asking the receivers which routes they're going to run because he doesn't know the play calls, because why would he know the play calls? I've never seen anything like it. It's funny. We talk about the fact that he is a aeronautical engineer. He also got traded 2 weeks before Arizona's opening week game. Like, I think he is a genius. It's clear he's a genius because, picking these things up and being able to adapt and work around it is not something you can do unless you're a very, very smart individual. So, yeah, it's the coolest story, I think, of the season so far from my perspective.
Well, Colts fans, because of being on the bye this week, may end up kind of checking out, making sure all the leaves are picked up, ready for Thanksgiving, putting those Christmas lights up. Whatever the honey-do list says, this Sunday might be the time. This is an old school, I mean like 70s, 80s, 90s weekend, because the best game is truly on Monday Night Football. Eagles and Chiefs. Is it possible, Brad? I know it's possible. Let me rephrase that. Is it even likely that we see a Super Bowl rematch coming up in February?
This is obviously a huge caveat, but barring an injury to, let's just say,
sure,
top 5 players on either team, I would even go so far as to say it's probable. Like, I think there are issues for both rosters. The Chiefs' receiving core is not good enough. The Eagles' secondary still gives me cause for concern. But overall, I think they are the clear top team in their conference by a fairly comfortable margin. The Chiefs' defense does not get talked about enough. It's actually the youngest defense in the NFL by average age, and I think it's a top 5 unit in the NFL. So Yeah, I think this is a Super Bowl rematch and a Super Bowl preview of the Kelsey Bowl round 2.
All right, sounds good. Obviously, I've spent 20 minutes peppering you with all kind of stuff around the league. When people go to PFF and search your name, what are you writing about these days?
Yeah, I just put something out today, actually doing like a general manager kind of ranking or tiering, so to speak. I know the opinions on Chris Ballard are all over the place in Indianapolis and elsewhere. But yeah, kind of ranking GMs. I'm going to start looking at the candidates going forward. I guess not super topical to the Colts right now. And then we'll get back into some, I'm the big free agent guy. So pending free agents, which I know also isn't a huge topic for the Colts. But hey, Samson Ebekam's been good. So that'll be my big focus the next month or two is kind of who are the best names available, where could they go, what could their contract look like. That'll be my focus going forward.
Not to tell people to not go to the website. I feel like I'm giving it away here. Tier 2, though, for Chris Ballard is where you can find him. When you go to PFF.com and, again, search Brad's name. Brad, thanks for the time and the insight. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You got it. Brad Spielberger, again, joining us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Hope you enjoy that on 93.5, 107.5, WIBC HD2. If you're listening to us there, if you're watching us in the Win Schuler's Lounge, ding. Got to do one more of those during the 5 o'clock hour. Write that down, James. I'm going to make sure that, again, all commerce is taken care of while John is officially on a day off. I'm going to go to a break early because it's now you and me for the next 35, 40 minutes of the show. Again, we're only on till 5:30 today. That's when Matt Taylor does his last thing before getting a little downtime for the bye. Colts Roundtable Live. Matt, Rick Venturi, Joe Reitz, head coach Shane Steichen. And then it's Pacers at 6:30. So if you want to talk to me about something, 317-239-1070. Phone lines are wide open. Nothing but air and opportunity. Hit me up on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw. You can even old school email the show too. Greg at 1070thefan.com. I posted this on both Twitter and Facebook about 2 o'clock or so. That'll be playing the role of substitute teacher today. And so I even got some topics from them that I might get to, like best wrestling finishing move. There you go, Steve Spinks. We might have that conversation when we come back. You and me on the phone lines, via social media, via email, and however you might be listening, whether you're watching in the lounge or listening on the radio, and I am much better looking on the radio. Back with more in a moment. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
We have the holy hand grenade. Yes, of course. The holy hand grenade of Antioch. Right. 1, 2, 5. Lisa, 3.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I am always amazed when that drop plays on the show because JMV does not strike me as the Monty Python type. Now, I am that level of nerd. I am all over that. That movie was made in the early 70s. I got eyes on it in 1992 and probably quoted that movie way too much for the next 2 years, my last 2 years of high school. So I was familiar that he was going to count to 5 with the holy hand grenade of Antioch. My guess is that joke over that new beautiful mane of hair that JMB has, courtesy of his friends at PAI. Greg Rakestraw in for John. I'm sure he's busy growing that hair today, and then he'll be back on the show tomorrow. The FCC mandates he takes 1 day off a year. Today is that day. John is back tomorrow. But you can be part of the show right now. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. Pete, then Mark, then you. Hello, Pete. How are you?
Mark, how you doing there, Greg?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm great. So just nobody will care but maybe you and me, but interested in, your thoughts on where the call ranks for you among the Monon Bell games of all time, and then the college football games you've called of all time that went from jubilation to one team to despair to the other to jubilation to despair, huh?
Well, you heard me on the tail end of it, and I said, allow me to borrow from Jim McKay and flip the order from the agony of defeat to the thrill of victory, and that was basically for Will Castor. And for those who don't know the end of the Monon Bell Classic, amazing game. First time, we say in 129 years, but really overtime's not been played in college football regular season games since 1996. So the first time since 96 that there was an overtime in the Bell game, and they had 2 of them. Castor is the H-back for, and I'm not saying it's his fault, but he's the H-back for DePauw. The snap hits him as he goes to move on the opening drive of the first overtime. Jake Pash from Lutheran High School of Wabash recovers. DePauw then blocks the field goal, forces a field goal, and who catches the touchdown pass for DePauw? Will Castor. He had 2 catches for 8 yards the entire year, and he catches that pass for a touchdown. Pete, I can give you some history on the Monon Bell. I know about the tip catch. I know various different games over the years, but obviously my source of knowledge is calling 3 of them. And in the last 3 years that I'm able to do the game, we had a comeback from 21-0 for Wabash to win. We had a half a foot of snow in Greencastle, first snow in a Monon Bell game in 25 years. And then we had that amazing game that was Saturday. So, Pete, it just leads me to believe that something special happens in that game every year. And I'm thrilled that the first phone call I took today wants to talk about that game because I'm more than happy to do so.
I appreciate it.
Pete, thank you for calling. I appreciate that. Let me get to Mark's telephone call next. And, yes, I'm fortunate enough to get to do the Monon Bell every year on the ISC Sports Network, and it is one of my highlighted days of the season. Mark, how you doing?
Hey, good, Greg. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Hey, I really enjoy your everything you bring to the show. It's a shame that John has to take 1 day a year off.
Yep.
But, it's great to hear you. I want to say this. I was big egg. John's got an egg.
Yeah.
Mike Wells has got a big green egg.
He's got a big egg-shaped head. Yes, he does.
Oh, yeah. Now, how about you? Are you a barbecue guy?
I enjoy eating barbecue. I love it when the folks with the big green egg bring, I remember having these bacon-wrapped jalapenos in here a few years ago. They literally, my mouth is watering thinking about them, Mark. So, if you're offering me a big green at a discounted rate, I can become much more of a barbecue guy, Mark. I'm not above payola here.
I will text JMV. I will get your contact information. We got to get you cooking on a big green egg. It's just a fantastic cooker, lifetime warranty. But that said, I want to talk about the Colts game real quick.
Okay.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I saw a kid have a great punt return, and he made a great catch. And I didn't know who he was. It's this McKenzie. You know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
Where is he a rookie?
No.
Or has he been with us for a while?
No, this is his first year with the team. He was brought in from Buffalo. He had been in Buffalo the last 4 or 5 years. He was basically brought in, I think, to be the insurance policy if Josh Downs kind of wasn't ready, because they really kind of play the same position. And so obviously the Colts have been limited at wide receiver. You can say they've been that way for a while. But there are clearly very defined roles for the wide receivers that this team has. Where Michael Pittman's your one. He's going to make your tough catches and move the chains and be your big play guy. Alec Pierce is the guy that runs the deep patterns down the field. You know, Downs is kind of a slot receiver. McKenzie is his backup. Ashton Doolin kind of would have spelled either Pittman and or Pierce had he not gotten hurt in training camp. So really, we've seen 3 or 4 receivers all year, and McKenzie's kind of that fourth guy, Mark.
Well, I tell you what, I saw a flash of speed from him that I hadn't seen in a while. He made one quick decision. He went right up the gut. If you remember that punt return, I think he went out to the 50. And that field position is everything when it comes to our offense. I'll tell you, when we get AR back next year, and if we keep, one of your callers said this about an hour ago, if we keep this core group of guys like Dayo Adengbo, I mean, that guy is starting to show his worth. I think we got something here, and we just got to go with speed. And I think when AR comes back, we got something going, and we will get you cooking on a big green egg, my friend.
I love it, Mark. Thank you. Appreciate the kind offer. Thank you very much, Mark, for dialing us up. 317-239-1070. At Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the show, Greg at 1070 The Fan. And let me, again, we had to do a pivot this year in terms of the Colts clearly did, but we in terms of those that cover the team on a regular basis. Because what did you hear from all of us in July, in August, in early September? It was, hey, this is going to be the year of Anthony Richardson. This is going to be the year where we kind of see exactly what we've got in him and then can kind of base things going forward as to how good he is or is going to be. Well, it didn't work out that way. But yet in the small sample size that we've seen, I feel confident in what he can do going forward. Like I don't worry about the quarterback position, and I would love to see more from him. Is he a perfect player? Absolutely not. Are there things he's got to work on? Yes. But there are also things that he would bring to the table in terms of the running game for the Colts. You wouldn't say the running game is struggling, but New England's not keying on Jonathan Taylor so much if Anthony Richardson is the guy that is back there. It just didn't work out that way. And, yeah, there's questions about can he stay healthy. That's a very legitimate and fair question to ask. We'll find out next year. But in terms of the 4 or 5 games we saw him, I liked what I saw. There's something there. And kind of to Mark's point, there's something there with this team, too. Those young guys are starting to pop. Odangbo being one of them. And again, he was a guy that was felt when he was taken in the 2021 draft, had he not been hurt and he fell to the second round, he's a first-round level pick. He's playing like it. You know, Downs obviously has showcased his skills from day number 1. You hope that Juju Brents is back for the next game against the Buccaneers. And again, and I likened it to, the scenes in the middle of the movie Major League. When the realization, hey, these guys aren't too bad. These guys aren't too terrible. So it's kind of the way I think a lot of us feel. Because some of us thought going to season, well, it's going to be all about Anthony Richardson. And I'm not sure there were these huge expectations going in, but it's kind of like, hey, listen, overall record's nice, but let's see what number 5 looks like. Well, you haven't seen number 5 really since the early October. But here the team is 5-5. And again, do I think right now the Colts were the best 7 teams in the AFC? Probably not. But if stranger things happened, and do the scheduling gods favor the Indianapolis Colts in the last 7 weeks? Yeah, they kind of do. And you heard that if you listen to the last segment with Brad from Pro Football Focus, and I caught wind of this, even though he's not on this radio station. I don't cheat on this radio station. I listen to him on Sirius XM. I'm a big Dan Patrick guy, okay? Have been for a long time, know the guys on the show, have a couple of those guys I consider friends. And so heard him with Steve Tasker during the 11 o'clock hour today, and because of his Buffalo Bills ties, he was rattling this off. Brad was as well. The Bills' schedule is ridiculous as to what is left. Dolphins, Chiefs, I'm not sure who else would be in that group. They seem to play like every good team left in the National Football League. The Bills have them on their schedule. The Colts have the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Texans, who are better than we thought they were. And they got the Titans, who's got 3 wins. And the Bucs, I think, just picked up their 4th. And the Raiders, who we're not quite sure exactly what they are. That's, again, every game is losable. Every game is winnable. They're in the dance with 7 games left to play. And I think everybody would have signed up for that this year before the season began. Phone lines have started to fill back up. Let's clear them out now. Jacob is up next at 317-239-1070. Hello, Jacob.
Hey, how you doing today, Greg?
Good, buddy.
Hey, man, appreciate you filling in, man. You do a wonderful job, so I just want to thank you for that.
Of course, thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to piggyback off what you said about, we saw a sample size of what Anthony Richardson is, and that's all we need to know. I think this off season that we have coming up, everything that we do this off season, and I know we talk about the off season almost every year now in the middle of the season, but we need to make sure everything that we do is based around him.
Sure.
Give him what he needs, whether it's wide receiver, offensive line. You have to make splashes in free agent. This upcoming offseason is detrimental to what Anthony Richardson will be. I think he's too mature of a player, and I think he's too good of a player not to bounce back and be better than he was this season. As far as going 5-5, this is what everybody predicted us to do. So I don't see how it's a surprise to people. Honestly, I think we're doing a lot better than what we should be with Gardner Minshew. But I just want to hear what you have to say. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking my call.
You got it, Jacob. Thanks for dialing us up, and thanks for the kind words. And, in my heart of hearts, I thought this was about a 6 or 7 win team going into the season. And Rick Venturi and I obviously spent a lot of time together during training camp. We do the preseason games together. At least we had 2 or 3 of them before, Al Michaels and, Kirk Herbstreit got into our pocketbook on the last one with the Eagles that, dadgum Amazon Prime took our last preseason game from us. But again, just watch the team. I'm like, okay, you see flashes. I think the group has been largely better than I thought it would be. Now, this is not like you can completely bring everybody back next year. You've got the Jonathan Taylor contract figured out. You got to figure out Pitt. You got to figure out DeForest Buckner, and Buckner's been phenomenal. You got to figure out Grover Stewart. So there's, for a young team, there's a lot of kind of guys that are up the end of their contract. And so it's not as easy as, hey, this thing's trending in the right direction. It's an upward trajectory in the offseason. And we can all gripe, complain, bitch, moan, whatever, about not signing that big impact free agent. Well, truly this year, the impact free agents are you going to re-sign the guys that are on your own roster? Financially, can you make that fit? So, from a free agent standpoint. But I'm also of the opinion, if you're a half game out of the playoffs, heading towards Thanksgiving, let's worry about the offseason in the offseason. Let's worry about this season right now. I'm also okay with saying, you know what? Let's not worry about it this week. It's the bye week. Let's talk about other things. I'm fine to do that too. Colts, whatever the case may be, or anything else in sports, dial us up, 317-239-1070. Tom is up next. Good afternoon, Tom.
Good to talk to you again, sir. You may not remember, we met several years ago at one of the IUPUI basketball games. Good to have you on the radio, sir.
Thank you, Tom.
So it being a bye week for the Colts, I am an admitted Steelers fan, so I'm curious on your thoughts on the AFC. And you may have talked about this in the previous hour. I didn't get a chance to hear it, but
sure.
Kind of thinking what the Chiefs seem to be kind of the number one, but then frankly over the weekend it seemed like just about everybody that you thought was in that upper echelon struggled in the AFC side. So I'm curious your thoughts and echo what Jacob just said. Really appreciate you on the air. But I'll just hang up and listen to your thoughts on where you see the AFC stacking up by the playoffs.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Going into this week, the AFC North had all 4 teams in. I thought the Browns' victory over the Ravens was massive for them because the Ravens were made the second best team in the AFC, and the Browns got them. And the Browns have been winning because of their defense, not because of the quarterback that they had invested millions in. Well, the defense helped, but Deshaun Watson got it done in the second half of that game as well. I thought that the Browns win this weekend was as important as any in the National Football League. The Steelers are uglier than sin, and they keep winning football games. They have not outgained an opponent all year, and they've won 6 times. And so no, that game for the Colts, huge. I try not to, just parrot, not takes, but even like the slang. But I will hear. So I'm admitting my faux pas before I do it. Okay, you will hear, and I heard literally I can hear Jonathan Taylor's voice in the post game after Sunday saying, "Now's where we stack wins." Colts need to go 5-2. With 7 games left to go, Colts need to go 5-2. I think 10 gets you in this year. There are really only 2 teams of 16 that are legitimately out of it. The Patriots and the Titans sitting on 3 wins. Colts got to find a win 5 of 7 to be a playoff team. Is it likely? I'm not sure if I'd say it's likely, but again, it's possible. Because even the team that I thought of their remaining 7 games was the best team they had left to play, they got beat at home by a rookie quarterback last week. That'd be the Bengals. Oh, and that team with the rookie quarterback, they're here for the last game of the season. We have talked about they're not ready for primetime players. The Colts will get a primetime game this year. You know what might be a primetime game? Colts and Texans for the last playoff spot, last day of the season. There's a possibility that that's absolutely how it plays out this year. Let's go to Melissa's telephone call before we get to our next break. Hello, Melissa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. What can I help you with?
Good. Just a couple of thoughts. Actually, one thought. We're talking about Anthony Richardson and worry about his durability. Do you think some of that's because he's so stinking young? I mean, good Lord, he's 21 years old. And most of these guys come into the league and they're 23, 24.
Right.
Just my thoughts on that. I don't know. I'm going to get off here and let you talk, but I just have never heard anybody talk about that.
Sure. No, it's absolutely fair. And Melissa, I think there is something to also be said of, it takes a while to realize that, yeah, you're still more athletically gifted than most, but there are dudes that are a lot closer to you now in the National Football League than there were in high school and there were at the University of Florida, even in the SEC, and that those guys can hit back a little bit more than the guys did in college and the guys did in high school. In one sense, you can't take away the running game from him because that is what makes him special, okay? I'm not sure if he's ever going to be a pure pocket passing quarterback. He can make a good amount of those throws, and there are throws that he makes that are jaw-dropping. And again, the one, because I was on the call of it, that sticks with me is from the preseason opener against Buffalo, where he throws, I think it's to Granson, kind of a deep slant, and the linebacker knew it was coming. And the linebacker reacted. And by the time he put his hand up, the ball was by him. That's special. But what is also special is the way you can run with a football. You can't take it away. You got to figure a way to make those business decisions and to avoid those big hits. And yes, to let that body physically mature, Melissa, that is absolutely a good point to bring up. We got to get to a break. When we come back, one more segment of You and I Yapping at 317-239-1070. Derek, I hope you made it successfully back from Germany. We'll have that call when we come back. Chris Denari at about 5:10, and we're out the gate at about 5:30 here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Ride with JMV.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? Especially when you're going to do 2.5 hours today. Colts Roundtable Live, the post-Germany edition, comes your way at 5:30. Then it is Indiana Pacers basketball. Mark Boyle, Pat Boylan. I think Eddie Gill's on the trip as well in Philadelphia. It's in-season tournament time, so get your eyes ready. 7 o'clock is the tip time, of course, Bally Sports Indiana to watch. The Pacers Radio Network, 93.5, 107.5 to listen. Now, Derek is joining us. He called me in this very chair and that very number from Frankfurt on Sunday afternoon, and he has lived to tell the tale some 48 hours later. Derek, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Greg. How are you today?
I'm good. Was your flight yesterday or Sunday night? When did you head back this way?
I got here last night about almost 7 o'clock p.m.
All right. How you feeling? How's that jet lag treating you?
I don't know what day it is or where I am right now. I was listening to J.J., and yeah, that's exactly how I feel, the way he felt.
All right. So you were calling us from the train station Sunday afternoon at like 1 o'clock Indianapolis time, so 7 o'clock Central European time on Sunday night. What'd you do on Sunday evening?
Well, let's see, Sunday evening, I went and got something to eat and went to bed because my best friend who flew up with me, he flew from D.C., his flight was at 6 a.m., so he had to leave for the airport about 3:30, 4 o'clock.
So overall...
Really thing after the game.
Overall, how was your Germany experience?
Other than the jet lag and flight and everything, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a totally different experience than what goes on here. It's like I think I tweeted a few times, like a beer party, a beer garden, and then a sideshow of Colts versus Patriots, because it seemed like the game was more of the sideshow. Although they were into it and they love their Patriots, they had several different jerseys on, but it seemed like the drinking and the camaraderie and the talking and the singing was more important than what was actually going on the field.
So, Derek, should we sing more at Colts games?
We probably should, because we need to re-rack some of our music. We need something different in the stadium at the Colts game.
I will pass that along.
The singing would be great.
All right. Anything else about the experience of the Colts you want to chat about today, my friend?
I would say if I ever do it again, I would go a day earlier.
Okay.
And maybe stay a day longer. My body didn't act right, so I didn't get to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do. I did get to go hang out at Colt's house. I could not wait for Mr. Irsay and Edgerrin and all of them to show up. I tapped out. I couldn't wait anymore. I had to go to bed. But if we ever do get to go overseas again, I would. If you can get an opportunity and get lucky like me and get a ticket, I mean, any Colts fan out there, I would tell them to go.
All right. Sounds good.
Definitely worth it.
Derek, you take care of yourself, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
You got Derek chiming in. And again, I recognize Derek's name on the screen because he was our lone caller from Germany in the fifth quarter huddle that we had on Sunday afternoon. 317-239-1070. I still got time. Maybe one call, maybe two. I do have some tweets that I want to get to. I was called out for being get off my lawn guy by Southern California Jim. Says I'm not that guy, and I'm 70. He also tweeted a picture of me of the University of Oregon court, that modern art masterpiece that I associate with Bill Walton. And like when I hear Bill to start John's show, I smile. When I hear Bill during a college basketball broadcast, I change the channel. And like the same thing when I see that Oregon court. Now, I hope at some point in time in life, I will get the opportunity to broadcast a game from that building or through the power of remote technology. Maybe I'm broadcasting from a studio here. I will learn to adapt to that court if somebody's paying me to. But as a fan, and I'm seeing a game, I'm flipping by, I'm like, well, let's face it, I'm going to watch Pac-12 basketball for a long damn time. So Jim said, I learned to adapt to it, and I put right back on Twitter, I have yet to accept that court and likely never will. And many of you agreed with me on Twitter. But as you are used to hearing me say when I sit in this chair for whomever I might be filling in for, I'm either the soccer guy for part of the year, or I'm the high school sports guy. And that's really 24/7, 365. This is, those of us in the business call this the crossover time of year. Let me give you an example into my life that was last weekend and the days before it. On a Thursday, I had 2 women's college soccer games. On a Friday, I had Cathedral Lawrence North. On Saturday, I had 2 IHSAA volleyball state finals. On Sunday, I had a men's college soccer game, and then I had Colts Panthers. On Monday, I had college basketball, and on Tuesday night, I did a high school basketball preview show. So I knocked out like 7 different sports in the course of 6 days. It's that time of year. To give you the great example of the crossover season, I got a high school basketball tweet just now, and I got a high school football tweet just now. So to Alexander, the high school basketball schedule from a girls' standpoint on the ISC Sports Network starts tomorrow night, North Central, Lawrence North. I'll be at the Jack Kiefer Gymnasium. LN's number 13 in the state. Got a big win against Noblesville this weekend. North Central kind of rebuilding, but a couple of buddy of mine's daughters play for North Central. One of them's getting to start as a freshman. Looking forward to seeing them in action coming up tomorrow night. My high school boys season starts next week with games at Trinity Lutheran and potentially Tri-West. The first TV game at ISC that we have is next Saturday is Westfield at Kokomo. That is up in the air because it's possible, if not likely, that Westfield is again playing in the 6A football state championship game, which would be Saturday night. In terms of, Alex, the teams that I'm looking forward to the most, in no particular order, Kokomo, Attucks, Lawrence North, Ben Davis. Those are kind of the big ones from the 4A perspective in terms of local. But I see so many games, so many different places. I tend to celebrate the entire catalog. For Jason, from a high school football perspective, you want a semi-state breakdown? I get to do Center Grove and Ben Davis on Friday night for the IHSAA Champions Network. No place else I would rather be. Great games all across the state, but I think I have done a Center Grove Ben Davis semi-state game now in 3 different decades. And hopefully I'm around to do it in a 4th different decade sometime after 2030. Jason, thank you for the tweet. We've got time, and we come back for maybe one more tweet, one more phone call. We'll get to Chris Denari in the vicinity of about 5:10. So we'll come back and wrap it up with your phone calls and tweets, and CD joins us to end the show. Again, we're done at 5:30 because of Colts Roundtable Live here on 93.5 and 107.5.
Call with KB and Andy. We recap Pacers and Sixers. Also, a look ahead to the NFL Draft. Dane Brugler from The Athletic joins us 7 a.m. right here on The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Excuse me, Robo. Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
Stay out of trouble. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Good choice. This may actually be what I call into the JMV takeover with. Actually, well, I will at some point in time. This is the last show on Saturday night before John actually does get some time with his family. Because at some point they're going to figure out that John needs to do like his own Christmas special, and he'll do a Saturday night show. But this is the last JMV takeover before the holiday hiatus. He will come back for, I would assume, either the night before New Year's, or just give him that Saturday off, and then he will do the New Year's Rockin' Eve show, Circle City style, on Sunday, December 31st. So if you have your random requests for John, this is the time to get them in. And I would hope that he's not listening today and he's doing something else with his life for a couple and a half hours. But please don't go KWS in case you can't tune in. In honor of the holiday break will be my request to John when I call the show either at sometime around 6:30 or about 9:30 or so on Saturday. Greg Rakestraw in for JMV. And again, it is a quickie edition of The Ride without JMV, which is probably good for everybody involved. Chris Denari will be coming up in about 3 minutes or so before he takes the airwaves on Bally Sports Indiana with the Pacers playing the Sixers. Court update courtesy of the Facebook feed of Mark Boyle. The court tonight is red in Philadelphia with streaks of dark royal to navy blue in the middle. Seemingly, I'm okay with that, but I'm probably just going to listen to more of the game than watch it because of the color of the court. So Pacers, Sixers, in-season tournament. Wacky shenanigans on the court likely to ensue, and hopefully for the Pacers, slightly better defense will also take place tonight. Last Pacers game until Sunday here at beginning at 6:30 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Earlier guests, J.J. Stankevitz of the Indianapolis Colts. We talked as much about kind of the Germany experience as we did the team, obviously bye week coming up this weekend. Sam King joined us briefly from the Lafayette Journal and Courier. Again, Purdue, as I would refer to it last night, they played the first game of consequence of the area college basketball teams. In other words, major playing a major. Xavier picked to finish 7th in the Big East, probably a borderline NCAA tournament team. Purdue, a lot of good things, enough bad things to kind of to keep your interest. They win 83-71. I didn't have time to get into this question with Sam, but it's kind of a similar issue that Purdue had last year. You want to have this level of depth, but again, you worry, are there enough minutes for everybody to kind of go around? It was the case for Brandon Newman last year. Now he's at Western Kentucky. 3 new faces that are part of the rotation. I thought Miles Colvin did some really good things, started knocking down threes in last night's game. For Purdue, to quote good old JR, business is about to pick up. They're playing in the Maui Invitational, and they are playing Gonzaga the first game out of the chute. They play Gonzaga next Monday. Then it's either Tennessee or Syracuse on their half of the bracket. Other side of the bracket is Kansas, UCLA, and Marquette. Now, that is a field out of the Maui Invitational. So Purdue's next game, Monday at 5 on ESPN2, as they take on Gonzaga. We were also joined by Brad Spielberger of Pro Football Focus, as we talked a wide variety of things with him. Before we exit stage left, thank you, James, for all of your hard work today. And we've got one more segment left to go, but it's going to be a guest that will be joining us, and I will let you behind the curtain a little bit, especially if you're watching on the lounge. I'm going to ghost you guys. Like, you won't see me for the next 15 minutes because I actually taped this interview early this afternoon. Because now I'm going from being a substitute teacher to being a dad. I got to get my kid to flute practice. Here's my conversation with Chris Denari. Again, joined by the television voice of the Indiana Pacers in Chris Denari to start the show. CD, I hope we provided you some entertainment on the way to Philadelphia on Saturday afternoon, even if I could not deliver a win for the home team in the Monon Bell Classic.
Oh, you guys did a great job, and I had powerful Wi-Fi on our Delta flight, so I was able to watch the entire game. And, I've worked with Hoff and Brad Walker-Marca before. It was as classic Monon Bell game as I can remember. And what you said, it's the first ever that has gone overtime because, for so many years, I remember when I was in school, Rake, one year it ended in a tie.
Yeah.
And that's almost worse, for either team. But, yeah, it was a tremendous game. I mean, DePauw, what they've done the last few years to win the conference championship, win the Bell, and go to the NCAA tournament. What I hope is that they can move on. The interview after the game, it's tough for a team now to have to respond a week later after playing such an emotional game. So, I'm one of those that, hey, I hope DePauw goes out and does well and represents the conference and the state very well.
What was Wabash DePauw basketball games like when you were in college? And again, for those that do not know, CD Not is a broadcaster at Wabash College, part of the 1982 national championship team at Wabash. Nothing is the football game. What was the basketball game like?
Yeah, it was always a big packed house. If we were playing at Chadwick Court, I mean, if a student was not really into sports, but was into the academics, they made sure that was the game that they got to. So it was always good, always excellent. My last game of my college career, my basketball career, was in Greencastle at their what now is Neal Gymnasium, which is their current gym, but it was brand new my senior year. And so I remember inbounding the ball in the end zone and a bunch of the football players just shoving me onto the floor. And I looked at the official, and the official just looked at me like, okay, well, nothing, I'm not going to call anything. So, but great rivalry, and I have a lot of friends on both sides. I mean, of course, teammates that I played with, but a lot of friends to this day that I played against when they were at DePauw.
Final question on this front. We'll talk about your actual day job and talk about one of the most entertaining teams in the NBA. If I remember right, at least the last go-round that you did the television for it, kind of around your Pacer schedule, it was you and Walk. So basically, you could kind of be the Wabash guy, and Brad could be the DePauw guy. In previous television iterations, did you ever have to be kind of like me, like the one neutral person outside of the officials that are at the game?
Yeah, I never have done that. When I graduated there a few times, Dick Martin was the longtime voice of Illinois, and they used me as the Steve Hoffman. I was like 24, 25 years old, so this was back in the 80s. And then I did it a few times that way. Mark Cuban's HDNet cut a deal with both Wabash and DePauw. So, I've never been not the Wabash person, I guess. Now, when you're doing play-by-play, I don't care what you're doing. You're trying to be as objective as you can. But, it was a thrill to be able to do those games when I've been able to do them.
Well, you'll notice in my attire, it was blue and green. There was not a speck of red, black, or gold in anything that I was wearing. And secondarily, I got a text from our great mutual friend, and Eddie White. He goes, I'm at this party. The DePauw people think you're pro-Wabash. The Wabash people think you're pro-DePauw. I'm like, I'm doing my job. I'm making them mad on both sides. We absolutely nailed it. All right, so let's talk about where you have been for the last couple of days, and let's start with that first. You and I joked before the conversation began on air, this is like a baseball road trip for you. 3 consecutive days in Philadelphia. How's that treating you?
Yeah, I mean, this is what the NBA, that sort of came out of COVID, Greg, is that trying to reduce travel a little bit. We'll do it a little bit later in December. We'll go to Miami and play a couple of games, and then Boston comes to Indianapolis in January. So I don't think it's something that you would always do, because I think it is tough for either team, the home or the road team, to beat a team in back-to-back games. But I also think it sort of creates almost like a playoff situation. This is what happens when you're in a best-of-7 series. You go on the road, you play either the first 2 or games 3 and 4, on the road. So I think it's a good thing. Tonight is a little bit different because it's an in-season tournament game. Both of the teams are 1-0. Tonight playing game 2 of the 4 that they play. So we'll see, what's on the line as far as the Pacers are concerned. I know they're hungry. They were disappointed in Sunday's game. They were down 19 early, came back to take a lead in the fourth quarter, and then Maxey took over with his 50-point game. So, but I like it. I don't think you would do it all the time, but from a travel perspective, it's nice not to be bouncing back and forth from the airport. And so I think, the NBA has hit on this a little bit, and I think it really helps the travel.
All right, so with that, you just led perfectly into the next thing. The in-season tournament. I understand it, why the NBA wants to do it. You're trying to play off of, there's a much more of appreciation for European soccer. You and I both kind of speak that language at different levels. You're trying to make games in November, December have a little more spice to them. I'm not sure if I'm down with the floor thing. We can talk about that if you want to as well. I guess let me lead it with this. How are the players responding? I realize this is all of game number 2 of it so far, and you've won game number 1. What do the players think of this concept?
Well, I think I think a lot of these guys, the international players are sort of used to it, right, from FIBA and World Cup. And I've said, Greg, and you've done college basketball for a long, long time, it's not unlike going to Maui or playing in a tournament in November and December where, yes, your college basketball team is focused on a conference championship and trying to make the NCAA tournament and ultimately winning the NCAA tournament. But you have these other events that are separate within your season that you are trying to win. And so that's how I look at it a little bit. And, the floors are flashy. There's no question that they roar at you. But I do think it creates something a little bit different in November into early December. And I think it'll be a work in progress. I mean, what it is now may not be what it is next year, 2 years, 3 years from now. I've even said, why not play 8 games in late November into December, and you're playing each of the teams in your group home and away. And that way, all the games that you're playing over a 2 to 3 week period are the in-season tournament games. Because, for instance, Greg, tonight, Philadelphia plays the Pacers in their second in-season tournament game, and then they turn around tomorrow night on national television and play Boston. And that's a big rivalry between the 76ers and the Celtics. So, no, I get what they're trying to do. I'm for it. I just think it'll take a little bit of time for everybody to get used to it.
Again, Chris Denari, the television voice of the Pacers, obviously Bally Sports Indiana. Coverage begins at 6:30, tip-off at 7. Again, this is game 2 of the in-season tournament. Both Pacers and Sixers are 1-0 in their group in the Eastern Conference. Let's talk a little shop here as well. Because of the maniacal pace the Pacers are seemingly playing, everybody is doing this now, but the offensive efficiency is through the charts for this Indiana Pacers team. Are you having to change how you would call a game because the baskets, the points are coming that fast and furious at this juncture?
I'll tell you, the hardest thing is to look down when you want to make a note or somebody scores and you put down a 2 or a 3, and the next thing you know, either somebody's laying it up at the rim or you've stolen it. And we're sort of used to that. I mean, T.J. McConnell, when he's in, he usually has 1 to 2 times where he steals an inbounds pass or those types of things. So there's no question about it, Rake. It is the game is played much faster. There's a lot more possessions. Indiana leads the league in points, offensive efficiency, assists. They're number 2 in pace, and that means possessions per game. So there's no question. You've got to be more alert as you call a game today than even you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I mean, I think back to those, Eastern Conference Finals teams in 2013 and 2014, with Big Roy Hibbert and David West. I mean, that was a team that would play in the high 90s or maybe the low 100.
Right.
I mean, this is a team averaging 126 points per game. Now, they've got to do a better job defensively. They're giving up too many points defensively. But I've said this, if you can just improve a little bit on the defensive end, you don't have to be great, but you have to be better. If they can do that, then I think this team will have a really good year.
All right. I think I've asked you a variation of this question before. Your first year of calling the games was 05, 06, 06, 07. Which one of those two was it?
06, 07.
Okay. And was that Rick's last year the first time around?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Because, again, it floors me. You're talking about the pace of 10 years ago. If I remember right, I think there was 1 year, maybe it was 03, 04, that the Pacers, I think, allowed 100 points 5 times the entire year. Like Rick Carlisle was the stingiest of, I'm calling a play. This is how we're playing. That was obviously the style of the NBA 20 years ago. Smart coaches adapt. Smart people in business adapt. And as you and I both know, Rick is the smartest of the smart, not just because of how many wins he has. Dude's like literally like a Mensa level type of person. Your thoughts about the way he's adapted over now 20-plus years of being an NBA head coach?
I mean, you're absolutely right, Greg, and you have to adapt to survive. And he was a guy that would call play after play after play. And in today's game, it's more read and react. It's a lot like the motion offense, right? When you think back what Bob Knight created in the 70s into the 80s, into the 90s, he ran the motion offense and, you never screened the ball, but you picked away. There were rules, but there weren't plays. And from that standpoint, that's what you have now. And so in some instances, you got to be a really smart basketball player and have some good basketball instincts to play the game the way it is structured now, because you've got to read what happens on the side pick and roll or what happens on the top. If you're down on the baseline, from an offensive perspective, if somebody drives the lane, do I go to the basket? Do I go to the corner three, which is a high percentage shot? So, yeah, there's no question he's adapted. I would say there may be an occasional time within the game he's going to call a play, but he has full confidence in people like Tyrese Halliburton and Nembhard and McConnell. And again, it's not like they haven't talked about the things that they want to do. Clearly, there are scouting reports and those types of things, but this is a fast-paced game where players are reading and reacting in split seconds to make the decisions that they make.
Well, this is a good problem to have. We knew it was a good problem to have, but there's still some kind of problem element to it. There's too many talented guys with not enough playing time. How are the guys in the locker room handling maybe some changes in roles from, say, what it was a year ago to what it has been so far this season?
Yeah, I think to this point, you've got some guys, Jordan Wara last year, late in the year, averaged 13 points per game. He's played very little this year. Isaiah Jackson is still very young at 21 years old. He's not played that much, but when they've needed a third center, they've utilized him. I think right now all is good. This is a very close and bonded team. They're very competitive. They push each other in practice, trying to make each other better, knowing that during the course of a year, with the way the schedule is and the way you have injuries and sprained ankles and those types of things, every player is probably going to have an opportunity to contribute. So you've got to be ready each and every night. The other night, T.J. McConnell had not played in either of the last two games, and Rick Carlisle turned to him in the first half, and I thought he was a big reason why the deficit was only 9 at the half instead of 19. So I think that's a testament and a tribute to the guys that, they are ready if their number is called.
Specifically, the guy that I'll ask you about is Daniel Tice, because he barely played last year. He's played one game this year. He was great in the World Cup, the old World Championships. How's he dealing with this?
Well, I'm sure. Rick Carlisle would say, look, everybody should be upset. They should be a competitor and want to play. And there's no question that Daniel Tice wants to play. But right now, you've got Miles Turner, who, again, is having another really good year. And Jalen Smith is averaging 12 points and 7 rebounds and playing as well as he's played in a Pacers uniform. So there's only so much time. Most coaches, as you said, want to play 9, maybe 10. And so right now he's on the outside looking in. But we saw him last Thursday get his first minutes when the Pacers needed a bigger lineup to deal with Brook Lopez and Giannis. That was an opportunity for Daniel Tice to play. So, you just have to be ready and able and willing to go when your number's called.
All right, so I'm looking at the schedule. This is not a typo. You guys don't play again until Sunday. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's crazy. I've always said as an NBA broadcaster, I'm sure a player will say like that, say it, the next few days are like gold. I mean, to have this many days between games, my wife has already. We've got plans with friends on Friday, which is very, very rare for me to have a Friday night at home. So yeah, you have to enjoy it while you can. But I think it'll be good. After the first 11 games, the Pacers will have played as many games as anybody in the NBA, and then you get right back to it starting next Sunday at home against Orlando, and then you've got a back-to-back Atlanta, Toronto, and then the night after Thanksgiving you have Detroit. So you have to sort of enjoy the breaks that you have because you don't have very many during the season.
I always enjoy our conversations, my friend. Safe travel home tonight. Enjoy the broadcast. Enjoy that downtime. I know our paths will cross soon.
All right. Thanks, Rake.
This has been an absolute blast, and I appreciate John inviting me on a day where I only had to carry the show for 2.5 hours. Now, he doesn't do the 4-hour show anymore. That was insane doing that solo. I've told people, like, doing a 2-hour show solo, it's like falling out of bed. That third hour, it's actually quasi-like work, but not when you have great people like James on the ones and twos making sure our signal got to you. Not to mention our great guests like J.J. Stankevitz, Sam King of the Lafayette Journal and Courier, and many others. Thanks for your phone calls, your tweets, your X's, you know what I mean, Facebook posts, whatever the case may be. Stay tuned. A Tuesday edition of Colts Roundtable Live comes your way next. Then it's Pacers, Sixers, Pat, Mark. Eddie might be there too, not sure. Second in 3 days from Philadelphia, and this game number 2 of the NBA's in-season tournament. Sean is back tomorrow, and for that, I'm sure there is much rejoicing. Thanks for putting up with me, Greg Rakestraw, here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.